All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have the legendary Ivan Julian. Ivan is a singer-songwriter, guitarist, producer, engineer. He was a founding member of the band The Voidoids, Richard Hell and The Voidoids. He's recorded and toured with The Clash, Bernie Worrell, The Foundations, just to name a few. The creative journey involves a lot of inconsistent consistencies, right? You have a gig, then you don't have a gig. I'm a guitar player, now I'm a bass player. And part of making it through and being fully immersed in it is that flexibility and the willingness to be flexible and the willingness to take any position creatively that you're in to make the most of it. And when a lot of people dive into it, they want to do one thing, but that's not how you're going to sustain in an environment that's ever changing. And Ivan and his career and his journey is a shining example of how to handle those endless changes. For example, not only does Ivan play music, he also teaches it. And he also runs a studio, Super Giraffe Sound Recording, out of New York City, and teaches those techniques as well. So there's always more than one aspect to whatever you do when you're in a creative endeavor. One cool way to kind of get in the world of Ivan Julian is there's this really cool documentary on Amazon called You Don't Know Ivan Julian. And you can see the studio and see the process and see the multiple aspects to the creative journey. Ivan also has a new album coming out. It's called Swing Your Lanterns. We're going to listen to a track off it. This is Swing Your Lantern Low off Swing Your Lanterns by Ivan Julian. Swing Your Lantern Low by Ivan Julian. The album is called Swing Your Lanterns, available now on all streaming platforms. It's an amazing record. It takes all sorts of turns musically and music styles and different approaches, but you can hear this extremely unique essence that's Ivan in all of this, and that's I think that's the beauty to his playing in all his recordings. Is there something that's uniquely Ivan? Anyway, before we get into it, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Ivan and sharing their insights with you. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Ivan Julian. Well, I wanted to start off with a Cleveland question. Did you know, working with Richard, did you ever meet Peter Loeffner?
Peter Loeffner.
Yeah.
God. Where would I have met him?
He was a singer-songwriter, and he was friends with Richard Hell, and he would go back and forth from Cleveland to New York. So I imagine around Richard, but
Yeah, this was probably before the Voidoids,
okay.
because when the Heartbreakers went to Cleveland a lot, as far as I know, and he probably met him during that period, I would think, because that name sounds familiar, but I don't believe I met him. My memory's kind of okay,
That's all. Okay, cool. Yeah, he brought punk to Cleveland, and I've been trying to ask a bunch of people that kind of knew him or knew of him, and get a little bit of an oral history, because there really isn't too much. He died when he was 24, so there wasn't too much, about him. But he was in Perubu and stuff, and the Dead Boys, but or was adjacent to.
He was in the Dead Boys? No.
They were in a band before, and they broke up.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
One half
Yeah, I
of
know
it formed
that.
the Dead Boys, and the other half formed Perubu.
Yeah. Do you know Tony Momoni?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in touch with him these days.
Oh, yeah? Very cool.
It's funny because we've always kind of known of each other, but he came to my studio the other day and we chatted. It was really great because what brought that on? I ran into him on the street, and then he invited me to a gig. I'd never seen this guy play bass. He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's amazing, in a great way. You know what I mean? He just puts stuff into the song that it helps develop the song. It's so cool.
So you ran. What was the gig?
Oh, what was he? He was playing with some woman from a Bedouin woman from Morocco, and also he was playing with her, and he was doing all this Arabic stuff, and Oh, there's this artist too. If his name I can't remember right now. God, it'll come to me. That he plays with as well. Um, and yeah. I mean, I saw him at two gigs actually. I mean, and each time I was blown away because great. It's not that he was fast or played a lot of licks or anything. It's just his feel and his presence on stage that's amazing.
Right. Well, and there's like a different like a rhythm section that like serves the song, and like those are always minute ways that a drummer or a bass player will do that. That really like brings everything out. And that.
You know what I've been listening to lately is Blood on the Tracks.
Oh yeah,
And
nice.
and you should listen to that rhythm section because they really make the album.
Right.
Not to
Yeah.
mention the fact that the bass drum is mixed way up high in the mix. But I mean, because Dylan's kind of doing his straight thing, but the bass player's leading him into it. It's really they're really great. I've listened to that album a lot over the years, of course, but I just kind of realized this.
That's one thing with like with Dylan or with like Coltrane or the more you dive into any of the records, like other stuff comes out, and like especially stuff like that. And I imagine as like a producer and running a studio, you notice that working on stuff, like how those different instruments like really bring, and as a musician, but at like little things like a walk-in lick can be a whole like game changer of a song.
Yeah, true, true. I mean, for instance, I mean, there's one song on my new record. I had four bass players come in before I was happy with what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, because I mean, they just didn't get the nuance. They spent too much time telling me how much they deserve to get paid.
The new record's awesome, by the way.
Thank you very much. I'm proud of this one. I think it came out really well.
Um,
Yeah.
"Love Is Good" is one a tune that really stuck out to me. Like, and it's really as far as like going through the last record and this record, it really sticks out with like the organ and everything. Like, as far did you write that on organ?
Did I what?
"Love Is Good." Did you write that on organ or piano?
I wrote it. Funny you should say. It was, yeah, I guess it was piano, and then I decided to do organ fills on it.
Okay.
But it was really piano I wrote it on. And then that's why the rhythm guitar part is kind of really sparse. It's like whenever I have someone play it live, it's gonna look just like strum, strum, and let everybody else do everything. So yeah, I wrote it on piano, and I'm a huge fan of that kind of like I don't know, dare I say Booker T type organ fills, or better yet, Sly Stone.
Right. Right. Well, it kind of bounces off with like the Dylan thing. Like, there's a lot of like piano bringing out those chords in a way. Like, it brings like a different like impact to it.
Yeah, yeah, so true, so true. I mean, this is just my opinion. It's really just my opinion. But there's two versions of that album. The one he did first, you probably heard that, and then the one that Columbia. I see why he did it over again because the organ player on the first one, he's just like, I don't know, he's doing all this Broadway shit, and it's like idiot
Yeah.
win. It's like, no, man, just chill, just chill for a second.
Yeah, it doesn't like it illustrates like every point to like how you said a Broadway, a showman way, which is not as much a I mean the words do that, I guess, as for Dylan, you know. Um
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you don't need all that other information. That's the other thing about hiring keyboard players. It's like I will never hire a keyboard player that has to use all 10 fingers at once.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of them are like that, especially the ones that have gone to the classically trained at Juilliard or something. They're like, I'm like, no, no, just bang, just hit the fucking
Yeah.
chord.
Well, it's like with any like the the serve the song is almost it's minimal things, and like that's when you really know a seasoned, I guess, a studio musician or seasoned songwriter or even I mean, it's like it's different live. You can add some more spice to it, but like when you're trying to really capture what it is and serve the song, it's not you don't potatoes don't cover the whole plate. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so true. I mean, and you have to have the ears. I mean, as Miles says, know not when to play. As opposed to when to play.
Right.
What you don't play is just as important. It's true.
Right, right, and that's I think one of those things you only learn the more you do it, And the more you've done too much, you know what I mean? Like, I should have held back.
Yeah, or the more you listen to stuff and you go,
Yeah.
wait, there's hardly anything going on here, you know. There's one of my favorite songs is "She's My Girl" by the Turtles,
Right.
and there's one verse. I think in every verse there's only one guitar hit. It just goes plank. Listen to that sometimes, and that's it. That's all the guitar does. It's so great.
Well, that's it. You've heard exactly what it's going to do. It's that's like the whole Victor Wooten idea of it being kind of a conversation. Is like when you know what I mean. Like I think you get more out of listening to a conversation than maybe you would trying to fumble your way through having an opinion in the moment on something you're just being exposed to.
I agree. I
Um,
agree. I mean, actually, I've taught as well. I taught
yeah.
post production audio to film
Oh yeah, that's
students.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, and I tell them you cannot hear and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, you can't listen and talk at the same time. It's just how it works. You know.
Was it a and sound production? I did a Foley lesson with my class during Halloween. I
Oh,
queue up
cool.
an old horror movie, and I have a junky theremin. It's just like a box with an antenna, and like we queue up like a old Nosferatu scene, and we record all the sounds that aren't there, and like it just puts in perspective like how much sound production, not just musically, but also when it comes to all the sounds you hear, especially in a thing like a cartoon or something that isn't there, like how much rhythm goes into that, how much like you have to think about certain things, and how fun it gets to be when you get to experiment with like, oh, if I move paper, it sounds like this or whatever. Um, so how'd you get into teaching that?
A friend got me into it to teaching at this film school called New York Film Academy. And I was, in town, and he goes, "Why don't you come do this?" And I'd written for Oprah's network, and I scored TV stuff for a while, and so I thought, let me try it. And then when I did it, I thought, ooh, this is a gig, but it's the worst venue in town. And but then I realized, wait, don't be an asshole. All you have to do is stand up here and tell people what you know. So it's not so bad, you know. And I came to really like it. So that's how I got into it. Yeah, I mean, and with Oprah's network, I scored this thing called Reality Chick, that was a pregnant superhero. It was a cartoon, and it was so much fun. It's like because every episode, demanded something different. They said, "Okay, we need a disco song for this." And I'm like, "What? A disco song?" So all of a sudden, they're like, boom, dum, boom, dum, boom, dum, boom, dum. It was like it was hilarious. Really, kind of testing the limits of what you think you can do. You know.
Right. Well, and have to do it on a turn of a coin, and like, because when you boil it down to like a cartoon form, it's almost like, or just like a brief moment of a thing. You really gotta capture the essence of like a style or a or a genre, which goes back to like that critical kind of listening of what really is this? Like,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, there was another episode where they wanted a Dallas type theme song, like the TV show Dallas.
yeah.
Whatever that thing with the strings and all that. So yeah, I mean, and we came up with that. It's like it's if it's like this. Okay, you're a writer, right? you know.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, like, as far as like teaching, um, was it kind of like the hump of that? Like, or the challenge of that? Was that just working with like students and trying to get like, because there's like, it's almost like this block where you have, how do you like get this thing into their heads, right? And like, I found myself like with the kiddos I work with, like color coding and trying to boil everything down to like a real simple point, you know, like and
Hmm.
trying to disguise everything as like fun and easy, even though it may not be. And like, what I mean? Like, how'd you kind of come over reaching the kids, or I shouldn't
Well,
say
because
kids,
I
students?
would give them a clip. One of my favorites is I gave them a Gunsmoke clip, that old TV, black and white TV show, and I have them write, record the script of this knife fight that's going on in the middle of the street in the daytime, and then sound design it. And I said, you can make this. They're kind of shit talking to each other. You can make it about anything you want. Anything. I mean, they could be fighting about each other's jewelry. I don't care. It's like just have fun, and that's how. And then when they start doing it, and actually creating the soundscape. They you can't stop them. They just get into it, you know.
Right. So it's the jumping in. It's the jump. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I also explained to him that this is like, okay, if you have a movie, I mean, these are film students, so I said, if you have a movie, okay, and you have bad, color correction, everyone will stay and watch the movie. Okay, if there's like kind of weird edits, everybody will stay and watch the movie. If they can't hear what's going on, they're walking out. Even if it's a foreign film, even if it's subtitles, no one's tolerating that. So that's why you got to get this right.
And it's a whole like another one thing that always fascinated me with that is I had a friend who made his own film, and they put everything together and they did it all on their own, and they did it in 2020. So when everything was shut down, and when it came down to sound design, they've recorded in music, but they've never like and they've mixed music, but they've never mixed like a scene where like what I mean, like where someone's walking in a room, and like it's such a different sonic space too. Like, what are some similarities from like mixing like a band compared to like a scene that you find overlaps?
Well, I mean, I more find the differences because, I mean, a mentor of mine told me when I first started out, he goes, okay, the music should always be 35% lower than you think it should be because the video is the image is the star of the show. Okay. For the most part, I mean, unless you're making a music video, of course, and and I tell them like because I have kids that, like or had kids that like want to mix music and all that, and I said, well, here you have so many instruments constantly making sounds that kind of are covering up everything, and in terms of an image, okay, it's just stark. It's like either and the dialogue rules. Everybody has to hear the dialogue. You can't have a big bass sound, something when you can't hear somebody scream, running from a bomb or whatever. So I mean, I think I try to tell them that like, it's different. It's different. Mixing for film because it's just a blank canvas. And from an audio perspective, and you have to carefully place everything in the canvas.
Mm. That's cool. That's cool. I don't know. It's fascinating because I never until they started working on that film, I never thought about it.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
you don't. I mean, that's the same here. It's like, I mean, because I've mixed music my whole life. I mean, but when it comes to, like someone walking into a room and then coming up to a table and putting down a fork or something, and you have to make all that happen, there's a lot of dynamics that go into it.
yeah. What got you into like building amps?
Um, I build tube compressors. I can fix amps. Two things got me into that. I was on the road with Matthew Sweet. Um, um, I had this girlfriend. I was really trying to behave, so I had to find something to preoccupy my time. So I found a schematic for an LA2A, and I looked at it and I thought, well, this doesn't look that hard because I could read schematics. And how I got into that was I took an amp of mine to get fixed on the road once, and I went and got it while we were in town, and I played it. It sounded great. And I said, what did you do? He goes, I cleaned it.
Hmm.
That'll be $400. I went, whoa, wait a minute. I'm going to learn to do this myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to clean the amplifier. So, I mean, one thing led to another, and I'm just fascinated with how things work. I am, and building the LA2As was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I think I've sold like 12 of them, and I have 2 of them in my studio. It's so much, and what motivated me for that as well was I was determined to see the needle go backwards,
Right. Yeah.
like it
That's
does on a
fascinating.
compressor. I thought, let's see if we can make this happen. And the nature of an LA2A is that the louder you turn it up, the more it kind of distorts.
Right.
So I thought, well, hey, I can do that, you know.
It's
So
interesting.
that's what got me into it.
Okay, so it was that's interesting because like I don't know, me and my dad really dove into building amps, like building like
Hmm.
these model like these sets. He's been ordering off the internet of all tube amps, and like it all came from us trying to figure out how to fix an old Marshall that was busted, and it was like half digital, half tube, right? So like part of it was like approachable, and the other part was like, what's going on? Like, only
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like, I mean, solid state electronics. I mean, transistors. It's such a different ball game. It's. I mean, it's like. I mean, tubes are fairly easy. They're kind of once you understand it, it's kind of like plumbing.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it comes in and it gets bigger and it gets bigger, and it's kind of easier to figure out. Transistors, on the other hand, because one can be used for so many different things, and it's like it's a bit more, yeah. But that's what got you into it. I mean, yeah, because once you have a problem like that, then you get curiouser and curiouser.
yeah, and it's and then it get like you say like how you described it gets to be fun, and then you can like figure out like it's interesting that some of these really quintessential tools are pretty simple things, you know?
Yeah, but you know what always fascinates me?
What's that?
It's whomever thought of it first.
Right.
That's what really
Yeah.
gets me, is like, why, how could they realize that this would happen? I mean, that's where I find the real genius. It's like, okay, that person actually came up with the circuit and goes, okay, well, this is going to keep the radio station from blowing up because we're going to limit the sound so it won't like send all this voltage to the transmitter, et cetera. It's like, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that is fascinating, like that first one, because after that everything's changed to some degree, and after that that becomes standard, and like everything builds off it.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but yeah, and
And
like sorry.
now go on, you go on.
I was gonna say with digital, it's like when you are like when not that there's anything wrong with those tools, but when you get into like looking at it, just how you described, like aside from that, also all the components are so small. It's like you can't unsolder or resolder anything without it burning the board.
Yeah, I mean, they're smaller and smaller and smaller all the time, which I mean, I don't know about that, that path. I mean, because I mean, I was always taught that. I mean, well, it's everyone's listening to lower fidelity things now anyway with MP3s and all that. But I mean, it's the physics of being able to transmit electrons that give you the umph and a lot of tube amps. So if you make it smaller and smaller and smaller, you can design the circuit like Bose speakers are a perfect example. You can design a circuit so it sounds bigger, but I mean, it sounds bigger by adding more low end and more bass, but it's not really, uniformly louder. Yeah, I have a huge problem with that. I mean, 'cause, I hear this, and especially with MP3s. It's like, I mean, getting back to teaching, I taught them that too. It's like, you can't use MP3s in your movie. I mean, I know it's hard for you because a lot of sites that's all they have, but it's Einstein's laws of energy. It's like, what was 40 megs is now 8 megs. So they've cut out all that information in the low end and the high end so that you're not hearing it. You think you're hearing it. You're hearing like semblances of it, but not really. Yeah, I mean, that's just, yeah, I don't know. That's my own pet peeve, as it were. Um, yeah, I
I
mean,
was gonna say, so what do you guys typically use? Like Wave? Like I'm trying to think what's a bigger
yeah,
one.
Wave or AIFF. No one
Okay.
really uses AIFF anymore because it was an Apple coding. But
Mm,
I mean, everybody uses Wave, so Wave files, yes, Wave
okay.
files. I mean,
Yeah.
and sometimes you have to. And people say, well, can I transfer an MP3 to a Wave? But yes, but just it's like starting with a dirty windshield,
Yeah.
okay? And it'll always be dirty. I mean, regardless of how much light you shine through it.
So, like diving into like when did like the recording experience, like what was your first time recording? Was it with the Voidoids?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, when I was in England, I mean, I came in once to a recording session and banged on a tambourine, which is kind of a vague memory. But and actually making a record, yes. I mean, that was the first time, and especially at the studio called Bell Sound that was on somewhere in the 30s in Manhattan, where the Shangri-Las worked. And
Cool.
it didn't have
Yeah.
faders. It didn't have faders. It had knobs.
Wow. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was an 8 track or something like that. And it had that first single we did with, yeah, it had like these giant what are called RCA knobs, these Bakelite knobs for for the levels. And yeah, that was my first experience. It was funny thinking of that because every day I would ask the engineer for acetates. I mean, having no idea what they cost.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can get one of those, yeah. So, but anyway, so that was my first experience.
And like was diving like doing that is that where the fascination started for yourself to want to do it on your own, or was it kind of just the needs to do music and to be fully immersed in it? This is an aspect of it, and I can't not. This is how it's made.
Yeah, well, because I've always been fascinated with how records are made. I mean, it's like what pretty much what drew me to rock and roll was the snare sound, and I can't get no satisfaction.
Yeah.
I just heard that and went, wow. I mean, like it's there's something about the way that was recorded that just like led me on, and I realized also after working with the Fordoids that so many times these engineers were not musical,
Mm,
and their answer and response was always no, we can't do that.
mm.
So I thought I'm going to put myself in a position where it's going to be yes, we will do that.
Yeah.
And when bands come in my studio, and unless it's something completely preposterous, I always say, well, let's try it and see what happens. And it just might work.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, like when you're in that seat of a producer. Not only are you like an engineer in the whole sonic aspect, but you're also kind of like a therapist in a way. you know.
Well, yeah, your job is to make everybody happy. You
Right.
know, I mean, and you're the one. You're like on the other side of the fence. You're the one that the band makes fun of, as opposed to you doing it the other way around.
Yeah, totally get that.
Yeah. So and wait, it kind of just rolls off my back because I've been on that side too. It's like, okay, have fun, guys, whatever.
Let me mix this up for you. But yeah, it's a tricky seat to be in because like with that red light button for some people, it takes a immense amount of mental regaming or mental organization to get past to get the right take.
It's
Um,
funny you should say that because I've been working with this guitar player whose name I won't mention. I mean, he's not that famous, but anyway, and he's brilliant. I mean, the other day I was like, I stood outside the room so I wouldn't disturb what he was doing, and he's just
mhm.
brilliant. The moment the record light comes on, he just loses it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, I totally know. I've been in that spot a lot.
Well, it is. It is stressful because I mean, depending on how many people are hanging around, they want to get on with it, and you want to do the best you can. Yeah, 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 depending on the band, but it can be very stressful, unless you just like go, hey, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm doing today. That's what I learned from jazz, actually, because
Yeah,
my father listened to jazz. I wasn't really a really big jazz fan until later on, but basically, what they do is document.
right.
Everybody plays, and they just record it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then they pick the best one out of the batch. But you're right. It's interesting. It's just like they go in and document. It's a demo almost every time, like
Yeah,
high expertise, but but that's a
yeah, but it's not so clinical
right,
in being overdubs and separated and all that. It's just just play.
right, right.
Kind of like a lot of the early rock and roll records too, like the specialty records, all that little richer stuff is like that. You can hear the room pulsating. It's so great.
It's interesting too with like something like when the like they'll put giant steps out with all the other takes, and you see all the other takes, and you go through and listen to them and see why, to try to figure out why they go with this one. You know what I mean? Like this one's good too, and like but that mindset of this is just a day in the life. This is just a diary entry. I imagine that cures a lot of that kind of like red light fever, or that nervousness that may come from having to jump into it and be like, "This is it, the final draft. I'm composing it now." Like,
Exactly, and it's all up to you or me.
yeah,
It's like yeah, I know.
what is it? And I guess the overdub stuff is pretty sweet now. Like when you listen to like what like what Coltrane and Miles and everyone, like back in the day, they had to do everything once. The idea of an overdub is such a miracle. Like,
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, like I said before about having four bass players, it's like, I mean, generally you record the basics with the bass and drums, but it just wasn't working like that. And I had to have the bass player come in and play over something that, was already there.
so with your record jumping into like, I imagine it was all done in your studio. Did you like? How'd you start? Did you like have a demo track and built it up, or was this recorded as one big group? Like,
Both,
yeah,
both. Yeah,
Okay.
both. I mean, between you and I, well, I guess it's not anymore. I actually flew some stuff in. I flew some stuff in from a four-track cassette player, you
Yeah.
know, and miraculously with some tinkering, it worked out. I mean, not a whole song, but like the parts or something like that. I mean, I, I found the more I listen and I read liner notes, records are made all kinds of ways. I
Yeah.
mean, generally, I mean, especially with like, bands, you think, oh, it's just a core band performing. Usually there's like, 4 or 5 other people on it that are really making the record, you know, come to life and all that. So, yeah, but it was all done in my studio.
And like, cause like I saw the documentary where it shows the clip of everyone recording swing your lantern low, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and was like so I imagine that one was recorded as a group like that, right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
'Cause I
yeah.
was those the clips where you guys are singing the harmonies. I'm like, if I know personally with me, like I have the hardest time with harmonies. It takes me forever to get them. So I was like, that session right there, that clip I'm watching now, I would have messed up so much. Like that would have taken me quite a few times, especially with someone else in the room. But then
Well,
again, you have someone to feed off of. So
yeah, I mean, I don't remember how many times we did that before they actually shot it. So it could have been like that too. I know that wasn't the first take that you're seeing in the movie. Put it that
but
way.
that's cool with that one. So that one was a one you recorded for someone else, right?
Yeah, Will Croxton. He's like a writer. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I mean, I played on it with for his band no, not too long ago, and then I said we're going to put this on the record. Okay, so we're going to like kind of change some things around, and we're going to put this on the record. Yeah, and Will sings on it too, which makes it
That makes it
um
super cool. It's like
yeah, yeah.
it's a full tune. Another one that kind of bounced off the idea with the going with the cartoon with the kind of disco feel was um not Love Affair,
Cut me loose.
Cut Me Loose. That one was like I love how on like this record and the last one you bounce to all these different genres, but they all seem very like potent to you. Um, with Cut Me Loose, was that kind of the same same approach, or was that different?
Um, Sometimes when I write, I model after songs. Okay,
Okay.
and there was a song by Ian Dury called "Hit Me with Your Rhythm Stick."
Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I always thought I want to write a song like that because when I heard it when it came out, it was like it just kind of blew me away. I was over in England and went, "Wow, this is amazing." And I actually got to meet him. He was a really cool guy. But yeah, I thought I want a song like that, that kind of moves like that, and then life's experiences filled in the rest.
Was it in one another one like on your last record that was kind of baffling me was Broken Butterflies. Like
Oh, the Lucinda Williams song.
yeah, but that guitar tone you get, what is that?
Let me think back to that. That was there's this company called Hanson that
Yeah.
makes guitars out of Chicago. Okay, and that was something on one of the guitars called the Chicagoan. Okay,
Hmm.
and it was run through a magnetone amp with a slide.
Okay. And like it seemed like because there was that warble and it like it beautifully brought out the idea of this broken butterfly. I was like, that's sonically such a beautiful like um illustration of that. And like it's like how is he getting that sound? Interesting. I've never heard of that
Yeah,
guitar. That's cool.
yeah. I have a couple of them. They make really great guitars. Actually, they make a 12 string.
Yeah.
That's the best 12 string I've ever played. Because Fender made me a Telecaster 12 string, and it's okay. I mean, it's actually great, but a lot of 12 strings have problems with the neck, where they're either too big or too small, and this
Yeah.
one just fits just like a real, guitar, and the tones that come out of it are really great too.
That's I
Yeah.
play a lot of 12 strings. I got a my band will take a 12 strings and I'll run it through a Marshall like
Oh,
um
cool.
but it's an acoustic body. Um but like it's interesting like it's there's always something like I don't know like I always I keep losing like I got rid of the second G because it's like the third E, right? And that's like a good landmark, but like it's a weird that how you describe that 12 string problem. is definitely it's weird that is, but that it makes sense with like how much is going on one guitar, you know.
Yeah. You mean you got rid of the octave G?
Yeah, and just kept
Yeah.
the
Well,
big
that's
one.
hard to keep in tune, and it breaks and everything as well. It's like,
Yeah, and part of it was like I was using the uh, Tim Armstrong's acoustic, and it broke off, and it has one of those rack tuning things, you know, like a rack set of tuners. So it
hmm
fell off at a gig, and the screw came loose, and I lost the whole part. And I'm like, well,
oh crap.
yeah, I'm like,
Oh
well,
well. Well, maybe it's destiny.
yeah, this is how I'll do it now.
There was a press release. I keep going way back in history, about Jethro Tull when Aqualung came out, about how Martin Barr, I think it's his name, yeah, um, used a 9-string guitar, which is a 12-string with 3 strings missing. I, that sounds like something someone made up in the office, but I don't know. Maybe it was true. I don't.
Was That's funny. That's well, you know, like you look at that and you're like, how many are there? And like now they have like those bigger necks where they go up the 8 and 9 strings and they go lower an octave. You know,
Oh yeah, I know. I know.
you ever mess with those?
No, I haven't come across one. I see them.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of I'm not a purist. I mean, I like especially crappy Teisco guitars and stuff like that. I like all kinds of stuff, but I haven't seen that. I remember once going into Manny's music store, and they had this new Gibson Les Paul that tuned itself.
Yeah, those are wild. Those are
Yeah.
crazy.
So I said, okay, can you make it open G? He goes, yeah, sure. And he pushes this button, and all the strings pop off it.
Too open.
Yeah, you're really too open, exactly.
I remember seeing one of those at Guitar Center in Ohio when that started to be a thing, and it's like the neck's like extra heavy. You know, it's like each tuning peg had a battery. Like
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's like,
just tune it. It's cool. I
it-
get it. Like it's pretty wicked to push a button and it does that, but um I don't know. Like and then those 8 and 9 strings, I just can't get a hold on those. You know what I mean? Like you get same with 5 string basses. You know, it's such like a it's extra, it's bigger, and it's like you can do more, and it opens up that sound wave. But it's like you spend so much time learning how to make this set of notes, like or this set of options, be your opportune like most expression out of it. To me, like it just throws me. I'm like, I don't know what to do yet.
I have to look up this guitar because I don't think I've ever like actually seen one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I have to look it up and see that. I mean, basses I
I can't
understand
remember.
because I mean, and sometimes you want a bass player to get lower than they can get, and like people that know what they're doing kind of just unleash this clip, and all of a sudden we have a low D down there, which is great.
Yeah,
I mean, but a 9-string guitar, I gotta see what's up with this.
I can't remember what brand it. A lot of metal guys use it. They'll use 9 or 8, or like like 7 strings too. It's like they get to like, and it's a lot of the like
That kind of guar thing. I get it, and yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe that would make sense because you would definitely get that. You
yeah,
get.
yeah. You ever mess with a baritone guitar?
Yeah, I have one. Actually a Teisco baritone. Is there baritone? There's baritone on the last album. I don't think I put one on this one because I tried stuff like that I have lying around. I thought, okay, we got to find a use for you somewhere because you're a
Yeah,
baritone, and
it's pretty sick.
no, I like, and that too takes some getting used to. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
where to play it on the neck. So because you don't want to play it too high because then it just sounds like a normal guitar.
right.
What key to play it in. Yeah.
And it throws off everything because you're like, oh, this should be A, but it's actually E. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I got one of those out of the trash. It was chucked at Guitar Center, and me and my dad patched it up, like
Oh, cool.
resoldered it, glued it all back together, windled it down. Like it was pretty
What kind
sweet.
of what kind
A
of baritone was
Squire,
it? A
Squire,
Squire,
yeah,
really?
Squire Telly, yeah,
You know, wow.
yeah,
Bob Klein is also from
yeah,
Akron or Cleveland. Yeah, he had all Squire guitars. He had like
yeah,
a lot of guitars, but he's not a guy that would go out and buy like a 63 Strat or a 57 or something like that. He would go down and get 3 like Squires because he thought they were amazing and great.
I think it's really who's playing it and like how you use it. Like you can make anything sound good if you want to, and if
That's
you
true.
put enough time, I guess there is some limitations there's definitely limitations at one point. But like if you're willing to put in some TLC, you can make anything sound okay. Like
No, it's true. It's true.
and like it's you get a nice guitar and like if you play it a lot, you're just beating it up. You know, I have one good guitar that sounds like I got a Gibson SG that I don't play anymore because the frets are all flat, you know. And I don't know what
Wow.
you know what I mean. Like it's you got to find a guy to help you with that, or like at least with I'm not good with frets. I'd be afraid to do
No,
that.
I don't do frets either. I always take it to somebody. And actually, anytime I've had a guitar refretted, when I get it back, I'm like, ew, this doesn't feel right. You know. Then after
Yeah,
like a week or two, then it starts to feel better again. But yeah, I can't even entertain going there.
do you do a lot of your own guitar work as well, as far as like setting up and like?
Yeah, I do the intonation and any kind of electrical thing. Once I even had in my main Strat, one of the pickup windings, the tiny wires
Yeah.
had broken loose,
Oh,
and I,
yeah.
whatever, I kind of calmed down and, and sat there and soldered it back on, and it worked. I was amazed. Um, yeah, but anything to do with like the finish or the fretboard or anything like that, I just like pass it on to someone that really knows what they're doing because it's an art and a science.
It is, and like, there's so much that goes into it, and like, and knowing what you like as far as like a setup, and like trying to gauge those numbers on that, and like relatively what can this tool do, what can this guitar accomplish that's close to that, and then what does it need to not buzz or, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
it is definitely a science. Another thing I wanted to ask was, um, when the Voidoids recorded in Electric Ladyland Studios, you all like so that was like your first experience there, but then you came back and you knew Topper, right, with the from the
Oh
Clash,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know Topper. Yeah.
and recorded with them there as well. Like it's one thing I would imagine would be interesting aside from like both those experiences is how are they kind of different? How did like the studio there approach working with the Clash compared to like with the Voidoids? Like,
Well, it's kind of the same, and which is why people go there. It's like basically when you're there, you're renting out the space, so
okay,
you can do whatever you want. I remember that, but the house, not the engineer, but the I guess the electronics engineer kept coming in and screaming at our engineer for blowing up the power amps, you know. Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of our space. But with the Clash, you got the more sense that like they camped out there for like a month,
mm,
so there wasn't any kind of like um, regimented time thing where like, okay, wait, let's get this done, let's get this done. It's like they were just there, and then this was not their first album, so like, sit around and talk, do whatever, and that was their house for a month.
got it. So lack not as much stress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely not, because even the song I played on the call up, and that, it's like it was just a jam. They started doing this thing, and I said, "Give me a guitar." Joe gave me his guitar, and that ended up being the single.
That's
So it
sick.
wasn't like,
Yeah.
okay, okay, we're cool. And I think a lot of that album was like that. It was just they had friends come in and jam, and then maybe, yeah, and then that became the single.
That like kind of like is it seems like with a Sandinista going from a combat rock, there was like this like looseness nearing the second half of combat rock, which like I think brought up some of the most unique and cool stuff from the Clash. Um, so like how'd you meet Topper? Was that touring with them or was that before?
That was before I met Topper at a rehearsal studio in London called Manny's Rehearsal Studio. And I'd gone over to London to like just find a band to play with because I was young and brave slash stupid, um, and
Yeah.
so I'm there. I mean, and someone directed me to the studio, and the guy was really nice. He goes, "Just sit here. A band will come in, and a band will like need a guitar player, and you can play with them." And that's exactly what happened. And,
Huh.
and the band was the Foundations. But while I was waiting there, Topper was rehearsing there with this um, a blues guitarist called his name was Gary Moore,
Mm.
and so Topper and I just started talking, I mean, and like we just kind of light conversation, blah blah blah, every time he came in, and So then 2 years or so later, when I go over with Richard and the Voidoids and we're opening for the Clash, I look up on stage and there's Topper playing drums.
Huh.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just kind of one of those coincidences.
That's great. So they're just like, sit here. Someone's gonna come looking for a guitar player. Be ready.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I had very few options because okay, I'm putting ads in Melody Maker, I'm answering ads and stuff like that, and I mean, nothing's really panning out. So this was just a real stroke of luck that I met these people at this town and country pub, and they said, okay, we're going to take you tomorrow morning to this rehearsal studio, and we're going to try to sort you out. And yeah, I mean, it just happened like that. It was great.
Wow. And like with the foundations, like, did they have the hit already? Was "Build Me Up
Oh
Buttercup" already out?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I was told to tell everyone I was an original member, but I said, guys, like I was 11 when that song came out. It's like nobody's going to believe
Yeah.
that. Yeah, they had that. They had "Baby Now That I Found You." They had "Build Me Up Buttercup," and they also had a couple of hits in South America as well. I think it was called "Bad Bad Old Days." Yeah, so they and that was definitely music 101, touring 101. That's I just learned so much from them, and like just you know, it's songwriting 101, all that stuff. I mean, it's just like kind of this like kept because they were like a good 10 years older than me, and they kind of whipped me into shape.
Yeah. That's amazing. Like the jump right into it. Like, so what were some of those like kind of like, I guess, lessons from those, like, I mean, I guess being exposed to it for the first time and seeing how it works is the best way to learn. It's like going back to like kind of the sound producing lesson from earlier, just doing it and adding sounds to the scene, um, or scoring the scene. But like as far as like being in a group like this that has been around for a while, like what did songwriting look like? Did someone bring a tune and like you guys build on it, or
Well, see,
like,
no, this was the problem because they had already written the songs.
oh,
Okay, the
okay,
songs
okay,
were
okay.
already written, and that's why I
So
didn't stay with them for more than like about 7 or 8 months or so because I wanted to write songs. I wanted to make records, and I wanted to write songs in order to be part of the songwriting process.
got it.
And what they did was tour 17 days a week. you know,
Jeez.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was like nonstop,
Yeah.
nonstop. I mean, we would get home at like 5 in the morning from being up north somewhere, and then the phone would ring, and the lead singer. He was from Barbados, and he'd go, "Ivan, man, come on, get in the van, man, time to go." Okay, it's like what? Wait, I'm just going to sleep. He's like, so yeah, they really, I mean, they really toured a lot.
Yeah. Well, you had to do that. Like, you have to hustle it, but like, man, that's like that'd be exhausting. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, but then again, as someone once said, it's your dream, live it. So,
right,
I mean,
right.
yeah, I was over there to do that. I mean, I never complained. I mean, I was playing, in a band like every night, and their touring schedule was weird because sometimes we'd be playing supper theaters, dinner theaters,
Mhm.
then we'd play a theater, and like a proper theater, and then we'd play like a disco, and then we play someplace that I can only describe as a moat. Where I had my Dan Armstrong at the time, the clear guitar,
Yeah.
and it like literally fogged up. So yeah, but that's what they did. They're probably still doing it now.
Was it, and I imagine to be in each one of those rooms and learn how they work and learn how to like work each crowd in each room as an act, like that. If anything, that'd be like a great lesson within itself.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, and that was the first time actually I'd played in a band where people were familiar with the original songs that you had. You know what I mean? So they
Yeah.
had that going for them. That like, okay, regardless of what else was happening, when we went to "Build Me Up Buttercup" and that whole medley, then like people were they loved it. I mean, and it's also like I mean, like when I remember the rehearsal when they were showing me the songs because I had like 2 or 3 days to get this together, the whole set, and the keyboard players like doing these like major sevenths and I don't know minor sixths, and I'm like, oh shit. This is someone that was raised on Chuck Berry and Keith Richards. Is like what? It's like so, but I figured it out. The music theory paid off, and yeah, and just it was a lesson in how they used it. How like there would be many chord progressions, like there is in "Build Me Up Buttercup," like the major to the seventh to the four, and then to the four minor. That like you realize so many people use that.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know.
Was it ended that the build that has a lot of chords moving in it, any just in general, each part, like
Yeah, yeah. There's like basically three or four songs all in the same, within that song. I mean, but then again, luckily, I trained myself, or or yeah, I guess you could say train myself as a guitar player, not just a lead guitar player, but a guitar player that could do chords, because I thought chords are songs. I mean, because I heard people that could play really fast and everything. They go, well, that's nice, But I mean, I'm more into something that actually, helps develop the song.
right. Right. And like that's a whole like I don't think you can learn that skill set without that experience of being a part of a group and seeing how
Yeah,
you can
true.
support this group and wanting to do that. Cuz like
Y-
I get, I imagine sometimes a lot of people want to jump out and just be, look at me, which is
Yeah.
cool, but you're never going to get too far unless you,
Well, people can only look at you for so long, and then they're
yeah,
bored.
or, or you don't know what to do. Like
Yeah.
4 minutes can be a long time, like,
Oh God, it can be an eternity sometimes. Been there too.
um, so you see Topper on stage, and then like when you also toured with the Clash, right?
Well, we no, I mean the Voidoids opened for them on, I think
Okay,
it was like Give Them Enough Rope tour. I think that's what it was called. Yeah, but we opened. They'd heard our single, and and they might even have heard the album as well. But then yeah, they might have heard the entire album, and they were fans of the band, so they wanted us to open for them on this tour.
okay, cool. So kind of jump in with the songwriting with the Voidoids. That was a joint like as far as like songwriting went, right? It was you and Richard and the or was it just you two like trading ideas back and forth, or how did that
Well, I
work?
mean, it was. I mean, arrangement wise, Bob had a lot to do with it.
Okay,
I mean, but
yeah,
unless it was a song I brought in, because then I had like had things I wanted to happen, but mainly it was Richard and I.
okay,
I mean, and Richard would go, "We need another song." I mean, as far as like Blank Generation, he goes, "We need an intro," and
right,
I just sat there. I mean, once again, it just kind of came to me, and I actually, I mean, I've told this story before, but at the time I was listening to "The Seeker" by the Who,
okay. Oh,
and
that
it's
makes sense.
roughly
Yeah,
based on that, even though it's not that. It's like,
yeah.
it's kind of roughly based on that. So then that became the intro to Blank Generation. I mean, I like coming up with things, and you know, um, and yeah, and like I said, once again, the chord thing as well.
Yeah, no, that because I think that definitely comes through with like love comes in spurts. Like there's like a the between the two guitars, there's like the rock, there's that chord progression that's going kind of up in pitch, and then like there's someone doing like a kind of like a rock and roll, like kind of like I don't know that six movement thing. I don't
Well,
know.
you can call it. It's called the Humpty Dumpty or the Chuck
Yeah,
Berry thing.
yeah, the Chuck Berry
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. That was Quine.
Okay.
Quine didn't like playing rhythm that much, even though when he did, he was really great. Because I mean, but anyway, that was Quine, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna weave in and out of that,
Mm.
like I mean, and kind of punctuate it, and we both believed in that as well, because our idea for the album was the Yardbirds, and whereas like there are two guitar players, they're playing together, they're never playing the same thing on the neck.
Mm. That's
So if
cool. Yeah.
so whoever got there first, then the other one would have to come up with something else.
That's cool. But it
Mhm.
keeps it fun and exciting, and then it keeps that like who's lead guitar out of the question.
Exactly.
So
I
was it
mean, that song I wrote called "Liars Beware." It's
yeah.
like his rhythm part on that is perfect. It's like these really short chops, and he
Yeah.
goes, "Oh, I can't really do this." Like, wow, this is great. This is amazing. It's like, yeah.
Because I was gonna ask, like, so it would be kind of like someone would have an idea. Like, would Richard have like a tune with a chord progression, or would he just have melodies or written out? lyrics, and then someone would bring something, or was it kind of like here's this, how can we make this better, like the chunk of the tune?
Well, I mean, aside from individual input, like I said, if I wrote a song, generally what happened is Richard would come in with a bass part,
Got it.
and then Bob and I would kind of try to make sense of it, and and come up with parts, like I said, that we're weaving together. But Richard would come up with a bass part, and then after that he would write the lyrics. Generally, he might have some idea for it, but I mean, a lot of it was phonetics, just like kind of screaming and yelping and then coming up with the words. But yeah, I mean, when the bulk of the Voodoo songs were Richard's coming in with a bass line.
Mm.
I love his bass line on that
Yeah.
song, you got to lose, if you've ever heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a sick bass line. It's it's interesting coming from like, because he was just starting bass at the time too. Like, right? He was fairly new to the instrument coming from television, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
So,
mean, and a lot of people criticize his bass playing because of it, but that's one of the reasons I joined the band. I thought, what the fuck is he doing? What's
yeah.
going on over there?
Well, I think
you know,
that's what makes like not knowing what's right or wrong is sometimes makes the best musical and like artistic choice because of that. Like it's like with theory, sometimes you learn all this theory to break it, and you're like, ah, check that out. I changed expectations. Aha! Like, well, yeah, I could have done that too if I didn't know.
yeah, exactly. No, I'm totally with you on that. The best moments are when you have no idea what you're doing, in the creative process anyway.
Oh, that's so cool. Um, So like one other thing, I guess man, I really appreciate your time. I've been when Howard sent me this email, I was super excited to talk with you and pick your brain. Um, but to kind of wrap it, what are two like what I guess what are two big lessons from like hanging out with guys like Joe Strummer and Richard Hell as far as like musically, philosophically, or
Humility. I think both of them
yeah,
have that. Believe it or not. I mean, yeah. I mean, when I say believe it or not, I'm more referring to Richard. I mean, but I mean, they're both kind of humble in a way. I
hmm
mean, and yeah. I mean, and they were in a position where they didn't have to be necessarily. And Joe as well. Joe just looked at himself as an average guy. He's writing songs. He has some political beliefs, and yeah, I mean those humility. It's like you got to be humble. You got to think that, okay, I can always get better. I can always learn more, and that's what I'm trying to do.
that's well said. Was it one? And also on a side note, to know the mystery of how Ivan met GI Joe, really like it was cool to know because I've always wondered what that song was about.
Oh yeah, well yeah, you know the story about Studio 54 and all that, right?
Well, so like it kind of like I know
Well,
it
I
now. I
mean,
know it's about you, but I don't know the whole like.
because prior to coming down to going over to Electric Ladyland, I had gone to Studio 54, and because it was way past its heyday, and everything was over. So I'd never been there. I wanted to see what this place was all about. So I go in, and it's like I think it was a Tuesday night, and there's literally nobody there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like maybe one or two other people. I'm like, what? So then this bouncer starts chasing me, like following me around. I'm like, I finally go, what's up? What's your problem?
Yeah.
He goes, I'm just checking you out. I go, man, go away. So then he starts to like go, well, what are you doing? And blah 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 blah. And like, so we got into this little verbal altercation, and that's how that. And so then I told when I went to the studio, I told the story to Mick and Joe.
Oh, okay.
And then, yeah, and they kind of made it, and they turned it into Ivan Meets G.I. Joe.
That's so cool. I mean, not that interaction, but I mean, like the outcome of that. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I even at the time, I found the interaction comical. It was like, come on, what am I going to do to
Yeah,
anyone or anything here? It's like, I'm not. And so yeah, it's fun.
that's awesome, man. Well, um, and health wise, have you been all right?
Good.
Good.
I'm seeing my oncologist this week, which is kind of weird, but because my thing is like I say, as long as I can stay away from the doctors, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But no, my health is good. I saw her not too long ago, and the health is good. Hopefully, I'll be able to crawl into a van and freeze all winter. You know.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I saw you were playing with Richard Lloyd. How'd that go?
Oh, that was great,
Yeah.
actually. It was good to see Richard again. Yeah, it's this club. It's funny. All the clubs in New York, pretty much, have moved out to Queens, which we never thought would happen,
Huh.
or this far extension of Brooklyn called Bushwick, because no one can afford the real estate in Manhattan anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was at this club out there, and it was a cool club and everything, and Richard played and I played and he said hello, and he was playing. He played great too. He's really still good. He's still got it.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Very cool. Well, you plan to come out this way to Cleveland at all?
That's what I'm trying to organize now, like along with this record coming out. Yes,
All right.
yes. I mean, I'm sure that will be a stop on the way. So when it happens, I'll be sure to contact you and let you know. Okay?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah,
I would love
yeah,
to see
Uh,
it in person.
yeah. Because I don't know what it's probably going to be. What I call the Magnificent Three.
Yeah.
That's the name of my band, because I mean that it was like um, drummer, bass player, and guitar player, and myself. But generally, the band is like 7 people.
Well, yeah, like listening to some of these arrangements, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So that was the first time we tried it with with this stripped down band, and it sounded okay. It sounded good, but usually there's backup singers and there's another piano player, organ player, and that kind of thing. So we'll see what happens. You know.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you can't like it's hard to tour with like 7 people, three.
Well, these days, yeah. I mean, unless I don't know. I don't know. I get funding from somebody,
Yeah.
but yeah. I mean, it is. Besides that, everyone I know are adults,
Yeah,
meaning they need their own room.
right.
Two
Right.
of them are women, so they definitely need their own room.
Right.
So I mean, yeah. So I mean, it's I don't know. It's ambitious of me to try to think I can take them out, but I think what will happen is that will only be local, and then I'll just travel with the four. And it still sounds good. I mean, I heard a video, I saw a video of it, and I was amazed. It's like the drummer we're using is this guy Steve Goulding,
Yeah.
who played drums on Watching the Detective.
Oh, okay.
He's great. He's
Yeah.
great. He really is.
Was it, and
Cool.
is the bass guy that you recorded with the guy that would be going on the road with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Very
He's the one
cool.
who plays the bass on Cut Me Loose.
Okay, cool. Cool, cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like I had different bass players for this. Like I said, I
Yeah, like you were
mean,
saying at the top, like with the other track having 4 different guys. I was like, which one gets
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whomever can do it best. I mean, yeah, there's one track I had someone play that like was a novice drummer, because all the drummers wanted to hit cymbals and do all this other stuff, and I just wanted a straight beat. Don't you know? So yeah, so we'll see what happens here.
Very cool. Awesome, Ivan. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time and getting to dive into your career and pick your mind about it. This has been awesome. Um,
Cool. It's great talking with you, Dave.
Thanks, man.